Choosing what you work on is critical both for senior as well as early career professionals. But when we are presented with a plethora of options or don't know where to really start, it can be very overwhelming and we face a decision making paralysis. But choosing things for yourself in your career is critical to your growth. So, how do you go about doing that? In this video, I'll walk you through my very easy decision making framework for how I choose to work on high impact, exciting projects that are close to my heart. Hi folks, welcome back to my channel where I talk about life and careers in tech. For those new here, my name is Divya and I'm a program manager lead at a FANG company, and I'm very passionate about helping people get their dream jobs, and I'm going to do the same for you through this channel. When you're early in your career, it's very easy to think that you need to work on things that are assigned to you or tasks or projects that people ask you to work on because you know that it's a priority for them. Well, that can be true in some cases. The path to a meaningful and fulfilling career is not just in taking orders, but rather proactively finding a path that will move both you as well as your company forward. And companies love such people too because they are actually trying to make new leaders within their own companies who will help move the company ahead. This becomes especially critical when you reach like your mid-career stage or have 5 years of experience and are figuring out the next big path in your journey. One of the best advice that I received was from a close friend of mine who's also my colleague. And the advice was that if you're at level N and you're looking to move to N plus 1, it's very unlikely that people will tell you what is the work that you need to do at N plus 1. Rather, when you're moving to N plus 1, the goal is for you to figure out what the work scope would look like for that place, as well as what projects would fulfill your goal to meet N plus 1. And that's beautiful. So, for example, if I'm a manager and I'm looking to move to say senior manager or director, nobody's going to tell me that these are the projects that you should pick to become a director. Rather, I should be in a position to figure out what are those projects that will help me move towards that senior position and then take it from there myself and not let some other person tell me, because it's a likely thing that they won't. So here is my 3-part framework. Number 1, I ask myself, where is the company headed? If you're slightly early in your career, you could also think about where your team or your product direction or your program direction is headed. Why this is critical is because you want to make sure that the work that you're doing or the projects or products that you're working on are truly aligned with the bets that your company is making for what the future of their company would look like. And anything that you in that direction will be very, very meaningful both for the company as well as for you. I get these signals from various places, and sometimes people might give you a direct one saying that here is what we want to focus on. But these could be very indirect cues also that you can pick up from, say, your town hall meetings at your team level, at your product level, your program level, or as well as at your company level. It could be from, say, earning calls, strategy documents within your company. This is where you'll get signals from where your leaders are thinking of where the future of that technology is headed. And these could take various forms. For example, leaders talking about specific geographies or markets where they'd like to invest more or feel like they're underinvested right now. It could be in technologies where they think the next breakthroughs will be and they want to catch on those. And amidst all of this, what you need to figure out is not just about the direction that they're excited by, but what are the problems that you could work on within that space. For a personal story, somewhere around 2017, I decided to pivot a number of my programs or initiate a few new programs that were driven towards AI and machine learning. And this was out of the public statements that my company was making about being an AI first organization, which gave me the assurance that this is something that's critical for the company and I could play a very meaningful role by developing the AI research ecosystem in India, where the company also had a big geographic focus. The key reason to align with your company-wide or your team-wide priorities is because you'll face very little resistance when you're trying to pitch new ideas, because they're actively looking for people to help develop that particular space and you're now contributing to it rather than meeting with friction on a space that the company is not going to be exploring or invested in. I don't deny the possibility of starting projects which are completely in a new space to the company or things that are not reflected in the company-wide priorities. But I suspect for such kind of projects, it would be more top-down than bottom-up, but feel free to choose a path that works best for you and that you are excited by. And if you feel starting a completely new direction for the company in an area where you think they are underinvested, go to them, go to your leaders with the right intent and the right rationale, and maybe it would work. But in general, what I've seen is that as long as priorities are aligned from a company level and they know that their investments are going to be in this specific space, it's very, very wise to try to pursue things in that region. The challenge over here can be of, are you sticking to the status quo? I really don't think so, because even within those spaces of the company-wide priorities, you can find meaningful areas. You can bring in your own personal flavor and think of new problems and exciting ones which you think are very, very meaningful for the company as well as for you. The next step, after you've figured out what are the areas and spaces where the company is headed towards, is to ask yourself, what can I do and how can I contribute to it. This can both be in terms of unique skills that you have, but doesn't always have to be. I have seen so many people go into a decision making paralysis because they think that, oh, there are so many people who are smarter than me in this particular domain. Why should I be the one doing this? Wouldn't it get rocked down by someone else, and so on and so forth? But my pitch to you is they haven't, which means that you have the space to explore it. So why don't you go ahead and do it? Because you have the right capacity to do it. And many times you can be crippled with also imposter syndrome, which is a real thing in the tech industry. So when you think of an interesting idea, even if you don't fully trust yourself to do it, at least try to pursue it. Next, figure out what are the spaces that are very explored, which are mildly explored, and spaces which no one has really charted onto in that area that we're talking about. And figure out and map to these on what you think the potential for each of these ideas is, and what are the chops or the frameworks or the skills that you can bring to these and solve for them. Many times you would feel like the way we are talking about this, that the solutions or the approach always has to be very, very complicated. But that's not true. There could be a large number of low-hanging fruits, even in a problem that's not fully explored. For example, if you're seeing that there's going to be a launch of this new product which is in a completely different space than the work that the company has done in the past, you could have the opportunity to set up an early testers program and gather feedback and insights for the product or the program team and make sure that they're synthesized in a meaningful way. So even while this was something that the company would not have necessarily thought of at that point of time because it was not on their roadmap just yet, you could add a very, very meaningful contribution and be aligned with the strategic priority. But the answer could also be very nuanced and complex if you're, say, working on a completely new direction. For example, if you want to design a new charter for life sciences at the intersection of machine learning, that will need a lot more thought and a lot more factors to account for. Once I have a short list of ideas and problems that I want to work on from steps 1 and 2, I like to ask myself a very brutal question. Who will care? Who will care if the problem is solved? Is it external stakeholders? Is it users? Is it internal stakeholders? And most importantly, will I care? Once you know who will care, it's going to be super critical for you to figure out how to align teams, how to bring together people to actually attempt to solve this problem. Mind you, you cannot take on the entire thing by yourself, and you're going to need a lot of help from your colleagues and your team members. And if you know who are the people who are going to care about this, and most importantly, if you think you'll care about it enough, it's going to make your life a lot easier to convince them, motivate them, excite them, coach them to make sure that the project actually lands. And when you're completely sold on the idea yourself, it's much easier to convince others as well. This important and brutal question, who cares, will also help you think a lot about other complex factors like metrics, risks, stakeholder teams, product roadmap, and so many more things. I personally like to center myself in this decision-making process because I feel like I don't have the drive to work on projects which I'm not personally excited by. And to make sure that I do justice to the product or program or project that I'm working on, it's really important that I'm actually genuinely excited about it and I care about the problem. So once you're through with choosing, that's just a part of the journey. There's going to be a lot more things that you would need to make your program or product more successful. And we'll talk about those in my follow-on videos. To wrap it up, let's go over 3 questions that you need to keep in mind when you're making a decision for what to work on. Number 1, where is the company headed? Number 2, what are the skills that you have to push that charter further? Number 3, who cares about the problem being solved? Do you care about it enough? This is not sponsored, but I do want to give a shout out to Pexels, a service that I've been relying on to get interesting filler videos and stock photos for my own YouTube videos. Thanks to Pexels and the many artists who make their art and resources available for free for budding YouTubers like me. If you found that helpful, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel.